Well, this morning I thought I would begin by having us consider just for a minute or two our firsts. For instance, I bet most of us here can remember who our first grade teacher was, or who we went on our first date with, who we got our first kiss from, or who we kissed first. I bet you remember your first car, the make and the model and the color. Your first job. That's easy for me. It was at Kmart, running blue light specials back when they actually ran them and said, "Attention Kmart shoppers, please call your attention to the ladies' lingerie section, where we are having a blue light special. For the next 20 minutes, you have 15% off of ladies' panties." I have actually made that announcement in the store. Yes. But there are other firsts. I bet you remember first time on an airplane, or the first international trip you took, or your first college roommate. Firsts can be very memorable. They tend to make deep impressions on us and stick with us vividly, even over many years. Firsts have a way of burning themselves into our consciousness and for setting the bar high for all that comes after. Today, the New Testament reading is one of those firsts for me. Matthew 6:21 is the first sentence that I ever translated from Greek into English when I was learning Greek at Davidson College. Hopu gar estin hothasarosu, eke estai dai he cardiasu. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And this verse comes from Jesus' very first sermon, the Sermon on the Mount. And it is my contention that Jesus places this passage in the first teaching sermon of his ministry because he wants it to be first. Jesus wants all of his hearers to burn this understanding into their consciousness, to remember it for a lifetime. Your treasure and your heart go together. Or literally, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Well, did you know that Jesus talked a lot about money and treasure? Of his 38 parables, almost half of them tell us how to handle money and possessions. In the Gospels, an amazing 1 out of every 10 verses deals directly with the subject of money. And this is important for us today on our Stewardship Dedication Sunday here at Starmount. And I know it has been a hard couple of years money-wise for our city, for our county, for our state, for our country, for our world, and for the church. We've not been immune either. So I know that there is just an impulse to skip all this talk about treasure and money and stewardship this year. I see a lot of heads nodding out there. Yeah, Pastor, we wish you would skip it this year. But stewardship is not something that we can skip. Because stewardship is not about an annual fundraising campaign. Stewardship is about a lifestyle to which God has called us. And I don't want anybody to burst into tears because of this news. But stewardship is something that is never over. Every Sunday is really Stewardship Dedication Sunday. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So let's take just a few minutes to sit back and try to understand more fully what Jesus is saying in this, his first sermon about the faith reality of stewardship. You'll notice the passage begins with Jesus' recognition that people are born with an investment instinct. People are born to save and to store up and to treasure things. As a matter of fact, if human beings weren't wired to store up their treasure, I'm afraid that the banks and the many storage companies and even the mattress makers might be going out of business. Storing up things isn't the problem. The stewardship issue for Jesus is not so much the what, storing up, it's the what for and the where. What are you saving for? What are you storing up for? And where are you and I depositing our resources, our time and talent and treasure? One translation of this passage has Jesus saying, don't keep making big investments for yourselves here on earth. Instead, make big investments for yourselves in heaven with God. Jesus is telling us that earthly treasure is a bad investment. Jesus says that sooner or later moths are going to get at it. And if moths don't get it, then rust will begin to corrode it. And if rust doesn't get it, then thieves will steal it. And if Jesus were writing today, he might add, and if the thieves don't steal it, then the children will inherit it, and they won't want it, and so it will end up in a yard sale somewhere or on eBay. Well, several years ago, construction workers were laying a foundation for a building outside the city of Pompeii. They found the corpse of a woman who must have been fleeing the eruption from Mount Vesuvius, but was caught in the rain of the hot ashes. The woman's hand clutched a hold of jewels, but death had stolen it all. And that's the bottom line in life. Worldly treasure is not a wise investment because you can't take it with you. That's what Jesus is saying, and that's why he's saying, don't make big investments for yourselves on earth. Instead, make big investments for yourselves in heaven with God. Heavenly treasure, says Jesus, is a good investment because it's a sure thing. When you and I enter into a divine partnership, depositing the resources of our time and talent and treasure in the business of building God's kingdom, a more just and loving and holy and healthy and peaceful and caring and connected world, you and I are valuing what is really valuable. When we are investing in building people up who are made in God's image, we are valuing things that will ultimately last. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Oh, I wish Jesus would let up in this passage, but he doesn't. Jesus goes on to underscore the impossibility of investing both on earth and in heaven. In verse 24, Jesus says, you cannot serve both God and wealth, or God and money, or the Greek word for money is mammon. And mammon includes money, but it's more than just money. It's bigger than that. It's possessions. It's the attitude of wanting to get ahead, of striving after success. You can't serve God and consumerism. And Jesus' instruction flies in the face of all that we have ever learned in our economics classes and from our personal investment managers. You and I have always been taught that the most prudent investment strategy to adopt is one of diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, we're taught. But Jesus says, oh yes, you can, and you should. Jesus wants us to know that you and I can't be wholly devoted to serving God and wholly devoted to serving money. We can't have it both ways, nor is it possible to look in two directions at one time. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Well, Jesus wants you and me to know that the heart is the center of a person's life. We talk about getting to the heart of the matter. We talk about following our heart and not our head. We talk about pursuing our heart's desire. And Jesus simply wants you and me to understand that attention, commitment, loyalty is indivisible. What you and I treasure, what we pursue, will ultimately be the thing that we gain. You can't parcel out pieces of ultimate allegiance. It's really all or nothing. There are two choices. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Professor Dale Bruner has a wonderful way of putting Jesus' point. He says, when you and I try to be a part-time devotee of the God of success, we will lose touch with the living Lord. We cannot work mainly for God and moonlight for success. It's simply one or the other. Jesus is saying some strong things here about faith and life, about money and focus, about life and life abundant. But please understand that what Jesus is not saying. He's not saying that you and I can't earn a living. There's a difference between earning a living and serving money. Earning a living is necessary, but what you and I begin to make when we begin to make our net worth the sole indicator of our self-worth, we come up short. There will be a spiritual deficit in our lives. Jesus is also not saying that it's wrong to be rich and talented or have a lot of time and energy on your hands. In fact, I pray that there would be lots of rich and talented and energetic Christians in the world. The issue is, what do you and I do with the resources that we have? Where is our capital being invested? For the good of the progeny or for the good of the world that God created, loved, and redeemed? Jesus isn't saying that you and I cannot have things, but He is saying that you and I need to watch out for thinking that we own our possessions. Some of us say, oh, that's really not such a big deal for me, Pastor, because I really don't have all that much. I don't have much to worry about. The truth of the matter is that you and I don't need to deal in mega salaries to be a slave to mammon. We can just as easily be enslaved by a desire for what we don't have. Jesus doesn't let anyone off the hook this morning. All you and I need is a selfish, materialistic set of values that gives things, whether we have them or not, a worth, a value, a prominence in our lives that they don't deserve. Well, this morning, you and I are taking time to make known to the Lord our financial commitments to God through Star Mount Presbyterian Church in 2011. This passage from the Sermon on the Mount can help us with that. The elders, the spiritual leaders of this congregation, have said that God has placed a vision for ministry before us that is going to require a 7.8% increase in the giving of our members in 2011 over 2010. It's going to require that so that we can be the faithful people and attain the vision that God has set before us. But as big as 7.8% may sound to some of you, Jesus is talking about a larger percentage, 100%. Stewardship is not about how much of what I own will I give to God. It's about how much of me have I given to God. Stewardship is not simply worrying about balancing the budget, as important as that is. It's about believing in God and God's ways and God's values and God's vision of life with all that we've been given. Stewardship is not about paying dues. Sometimes, actually, I wish it were about paying dues because it'd be a whole lot easier. Just tell me how much I owe, and then I can pay my bill to the Lord just like I pay my bill to the power company. But stewardship is not paying dues. It's about deliberately making deposits of my time and my energy and what I have and who I am in the life and ministry and values of the kingdom of God. Stewardship is not primarily a fundraising program. It's fundamentally an issue of faithfulness, an issue of priorities, a matter of desire and focus. For says Jesus, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So how much of your income then should you give through the church to God? You'd like me to answer that, wouldn't you? But I don't know. That's between you and God. That's something for you and God to figure out. For some of us, the biblical tithe, the 10%, will be a goal to aim for. For others, it will be something to go beyond. The important amount to keep in mind on this subject is the amount 100%.